Hello there. Welcome along to the Leading with GenAI podcast. Joined, as always, by Rob and Pat. Pat, you look like you're at home. Rob, you are out and about. Tell us, where are you? What are you up to?
Well, I am out and about. I actually had a 200-kilometer drive from my home in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of Finland. I literally saw 5 other cars on the drive here today. And what you wouldn't realize is the Europe's #1 supercomputer. So I'll be visiting there in about an hour from now. And right now I'm at something called the Kajaani Digital Summit about data economy. And this is supported by basically the Finnish government and a lot of EU money. So this is really about, a country like Finland being a knowledge center, a knowledge economy, a lot of infrastructure investment going on here. And it's really cool, actually. There's been a lot of interesting speakers here. And, I think for what we're doing on, the Leading with GenAI podcast is, I know we're not just working with large corporates, we're working with smaller businesses as well. And what I've been amazed with is 20% of the capacity of this supercomputer is actually set aside for small businesses in the EU. And they get to, try before you buy, effectively, do trial stuff. And also the universities get to use it for free. So it's quite cool. And I could go into lots of detail, but I think one takeaway from a small company here today said stuff that would normally take them 1 to 4 weeks, they can now get done in a couple of hours because they basically train the models. It's not cloud hosting or anything, but they can train the models and then they can host it 24/7 somewhere else. So
yeah, cool. Fantastic. So what do you have to do? You have to EU companies and universities could bid for time on there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it was about 10 countries who got together and they decided to do it here because, as we've talked about in this podcast before, we have to be considerate of the environment. And so the great thing here is you've got renewable energy. The speaker that's on at the moment is actually from Iceland, so they've got geothermal and all that kind of stuff. But here, it's quite cold as well. So all the excess heat is basically used for heating the city. Yeah. So
Can I jump in with that?
Please, yeah.
Yeah, I went to the CSC compute event in Kajaani last winter actually, and there were some really interesting people from like the Met Office doing demos on the simulations that they're running on that Lumi computer. And then I went actually down to CSC and Espoo to ask about, how easy it is to get capacity. And they are so open, the CSC team, in terms of, welcoming new organizations to actually test, as you say, and also, spin up new models together with universities. So I really recommend that people look into that. It's really amazing. And by the way, it's not in the middle of nowhere. It's in a city called Kajaani, which is a wonderful city with wonderful people. So I want to pull you up on that one, Rob.
It's all relevant, right? Yeah, I think next month I'm going to be in Mexico City.
Mate.
So I'm going to be in Mexico City, I think, this time next month. So it's going to feel like the middle of nowhere there. There's not millions of people around. Going on your point, Pat, just quickly, sorry, Geoff, you're right. I mean, the stuff that they're doing here is climate research, environmental modeling, medical research, and genomics. And we've talked about personalized medicine a lot and the computing power is needed for that. Obviously, AI and machine learning, there's lots of different people creating their learning algorithms here. Quantum computing research, astrophysics, material science, energy and sustainable research. So there's loads of cool stuff. And one other really nice application is ICEYE, which is basically a satellite data company. And they were set up really for the insurance industry, but they're actually using it for monitoring the battlefields in Ukraine as well. And that's all being done through this Lumi computer. And as Pat said, it's managed by CSC.
Yeah. Fantastic. Wow, what a story. I mean, it's amazing some of the resources that we have right here on our doorstep in Europe, isn't it? That's available. So cool. Well, excited. What we'll do is we'll put the links to that conference you're at, Rob, and the supercomputer. We'll put that into the show notes if people want to have a look through it. But it certainly sounds really, really interesting, doesn't it? For sure. So what we're going to talk about today? Look, what's the story of the week has got to be to do with the Apple, who are glowing at us with all this fantastic new updates and things with Apple Intelligence and the latest iPhone 16 and so on. And I guess what I kind of got thinking about with that, and I'm sure people have probably read all of these things about the Apple update event. I mean, obviously we saw a lot of this stuff earlier at WWDC, but of course that's a very developer focused event, isn't it? So this is the mainstream public announcement for Apple Intelligence and what is all there. I think, this feels to me like this is Apple kind of catching up with the rest of the world. Hopefully, from what I've seen of it and the demos they showed and so on, this is going to be about, Siri no longer sucks. I'm a massive Apple fan. I love my iPhone, my Mac, my iPad, but Siri's just useless, isn't it? To the point where I hardly even use it. I think the only thing I ever use it for is if I need to text my wife when I'm driving in the car, so I can do that completely hands-free. But that's about it. But I like some of the stuff I was seeing in there. So, things like obviously the updates to Siri, the fact they've introduced that natural language search now. The demos I saw, and I think it's limited in the first launch to doing a natural language search through photos, which I thought was a really nice bit of user experience. The amount of times you're saying, "Oh, do you remember when we were at that party or at that whatever?" And you could sort of describe it, couldn't you? But you've got to try and search through and find the images. So I thought that was really interesting. And then thinking about the art of the possible, where does that go to? Natural language search for everything, through your email, through music, through absolutely everything that's on your phone. And I really like the stuff I saw as well with the writing tools. And what they've done there is that it's not just specific to an Apple application. It's the keyboard. When you start typing something in the same way the predictive text works across all applications, you now get that writing assistant as well. And I thought that was really, really useful. So what struck me about this was is this a breakthrough moment now for generative AI and adoption? Because for the three of us and many other people, us who've drunk the Kool-Aid of generative AI, we'll go through those steps to let's take a use case that you saw in those demos Apple did, where you could take a photo of something on your new iPhone 16. It's got that lovely new button. You would be outside a restaurant, I think was the demo they show. You're outside a restaurant, you can take a photo of it and say, is this restaurant any good? And you've got that lovely seamless bit of UX where it just goes straight through and can tell you about the ratings and all that kind of thing. Now, of course, you could do that sort of today, because you could take a picture of it, you could put it into ChatGPT and say, what is this restaurant? It would probably be able to find it. And then it would be able to look up reviews for you. But there's quite a few steps to get into that process. So what really struck me about this was that, is this now going to be our breakthrough moment? Because the usability is now so much better, and you're just going to be able to do this. So it becomes mainstream, in the same way that we all use text messages. We don't even think about what we're doing now. We just send messages around with people. So that was really the thing that jumped out to me was, the impact that could have in Gen AI adoption. But so what do you guys reckon?
Well, first of all, I can relate personally to a lot of that, trying to use Siri driving today when it keeps telling me I can't display those results because you're driving. Yeah. So, I'm looking forward to getting into that. I think I've already got a message from my telephone provider trying to get me to buy the iPhone 16. So I'm a bit of an Apple fanboy, I must say. So I'm excited by it. Mm.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think a lot of this stuff is going to naturally just blend into the background. We'll just be using it. I'm not sure if it's going to convince me to, I've got a 15. I'm not sure if it's going to convince me to go out and buy 16 when they're available over here in Europe. But we'll see. I have to say that I'm much more interested in the kind of enterprise capabilities that are, being driven by the main LLM providers and what's going on there but I do think that this in general will drive a lot more utility for the phone in terms of how you can use it for business and for various other situations. So I think actually this just builds on the power of the phone. And, there's been a lot of kind of activity around developing new devices that people would have to carry around. I think, again, this is reinforcing the value of what we carry around already in our pocket, and it's just going to get better and better. Whether it's whether it's an Apple device or whether it's something else from Android or something like that. So exciting times. I just think it's great that there's so much going on in terms of. I just want to segue away from the Apple for a minute, because I discover so many latent new capabilities using ChatGPT on a daily basis, things I never even considered before, that would seem bizarre if I'd kind of asked someone to do it myself. But I think the same thing's going to happen with the iPhone. We'll start just discovering things that are really amazing, but then very, very quickly become very, very normal. And for me, that's very interesting.
I agree with Pat. Yeah, for sure. I think you're absolutely right. I think this is like this will be the normalization of it. In the same way that these days. I was actually thinking the other day about this. Was that you remember even 20 years ago, if you needed to meet up with arrange to meet up with some friends, you'd have to go through and take quite a bit of work to doing that and agree to be at a certain place at a certain time. Whereas now you'd never even think of that. If you were going to go to the cinema or go to a restaurant or whatever, what would you do? Somebody in your group would set up a WhatsApp group for it, add everybody into it, and you'd all have a discussion about where you're going to meet. And you wouldn't think too hard. And I think this is quite interesting how it changes those behaviors. If in 20 years ago, if you agreed you were going to meet somewhere Saturday afternoon at 1:00, you'd had to make sure you were there. Otherwise, you'd then end up probably losing the group, or you'd have to phone somebody. 30 years ago, you definitely would have lost the group. Whereas now, you could be a little bit more lazy. You're like, well, if I'm running late, I can just post a message in the WhatsApp group saying I'm running a bit late. Where are you guys? And like, oh, we've moved on to this other pub or bar or whatever, And it just fundamentally changes our behaviours. The way we go about things. So yeah, I think you're right, Pat. I think it will be behavior changing in that kind of way, similar to how we're all a bit lazy now with spelling, because the spell checker even on your phone is going to work it out and that kind of stuff. So there we go. You got your dog there, Pat.
You got the dog.
Yeah,
but
sorry,
Pat
I've got to look after my puppy today, and it's one of these Sonic toys, so I can't hear it, but it drives the dog crazy. Anyway, that's the sorry to disturb the flow.
And Pat, you said you wanted to come away from Apple, and Geoff, you have another favourite fruit this week, I think.
Oh, very well done there, Rob. Very well done indeed. I like the way you just segued that one through. So, yeah, this thing with ChatGPT, OpenAI, and Strawberry, actually these two do link together quite well here, don't they? Which is that is Apple actually going to launch anything in the final quarter of this year on the phone? Because I've noticed a lot of these features they're still saying it's beta on the Apple Intelligence. There's a lot of beta features in there, and it kind of feels like OpenAI has been teasing us since, I can't remember when that was, when ChatGPT 4.0 was demoed. It's a long time ago. I want to say it was about May or something like that. And then 4.0, the model came out. But I don't know about you guys, but on my ChatGPT Plus subscription, I haven't yet got voice assistant added, and I've seen more and more people doing demos of it, and they've had it added to theirs, but I've not had it come up yet. I got Memory appeared last week on my ChatGPT, so it kind of feels like these vendors keep, they keep sort of promising all these things and demoing us all these latest sexy technology and not actually releasing it. But anyway, Strawberry, that's been around for QStar, as it was originally apparently called, or not, depending on who you ask about it. Otherwise, this is very interesting because Perplexity's been running Strawberry on their platform for some time. Apparently, there was a sort of a tweet exchange between Sam Altman and the chief exec of the founder of Perplexity a little while back, and they sort of revealed that they were using it in there. So apparently it's much better at reasoning and coming up with responses to what you've asked. It actually thinks through what your response is. I did see that apparently it comes with about a 10 to 20 second delay as it ponders and goes through the response. And there's a few people have commented that who've tried it have said, they're not sure it's better than what was before. But that could just be the kind of tasks they're asking for and the kind of prompts and that sort of thing. And then I sort of thought on it as well, this sort of 10 to 20 second delay, if you use like a chain of thought type prompt where you actually get it to ask and think it through and ponder it and review it, you've got a whole multi-step prompt you put together to get to your response. Although you'll see it happening on the screen, that'll take sort of 10 to 20 seconds to get through it, anyway as well. But so apparently this is going to be launched next week. Which will be really, really exciting to see. Could be another step change. I was very impressed with when the 4.0 model came out. I think you guys probably heard me talk about it before. There was a blog I wrote back in about March of this year where I talked about how to create good prompts to get the right responses out when you're writing marketing content. And then within a few weeks later, I was doing a demo video on it with 4.0 and went, this is kind of what I wrote is now out of date completely because ChatGPT 4.0 was that much better. So I mean, what do you guys think on Strawberry and the update and the possibility of it?
Do you want to go first, Rob, or shall I?
Sorry, it just got a little bit noisy here. You go.
Okay, yeah. So couple of questions. First of all, are they going to drop it on all of us at the same time, or are they going to phase it in rather? Like, I mean, I still haven't got this voice, advanced voice here, and then in terms of the waiting for the responses, the 10 to 20 seconds, I guess that will depend also on the time of day you're kind of testing it out and how many people are hammering it at the same time just to play with it. But I'm really excited about it, and I understand it's just text at the moment, isn't it, Geoff? It's not multimodal or Strawberry.
It's not multimodal. Yeah.
But I think a bunch of people will probably figure out some interesting hacks around combining that with various other visual tools as well. So I'm interested to see what goes on there. I just like all of these things that are coming out of OpenAI. I can't wait to get my hands on it just to figure out what kind of new stuff is in there that you didn't really consider before, and what that can bring to the conversations I have with business leaders in the different organizations I'm working with. So really, I just can't wait to get hands-on with it and get behind the hype and actually see what you can do in your own creative situations.
Yeah, for sure. And
just
I do think there's this kind of I'll just finish this up, Rob. I think there's also something about this sort of, it's not, is it a law of diminishing returns? It's maybe a variation on that, where, we've very rapidly had this progression, probably not from Sam Altman's perspective, because he remembers GPT 1, 2, and 3, as that kind of came through. But in the last sort of 18 months, coming up for 2 years this November, when ChatGPT first launched, you had this very rapid progression, and 4.0, as we were just talking about, has been a massive leap forward in the capability of the model. I think we're getting to this kind of flattening off of the curve, it feels like to me, where it's more than good enough for what most people need to use. And so Strawberry could well be this update that actually you don't need much more than that. And for everyday tasks that you might be using ChatGPT for, or Copilot, or any other large language model AI assistant, it's good enough. And sure, it'll be able to do some more incredible things as it comes along. But I wonder if we're getting to that sort of very plateau, but it's not a bad plateau that we might get to.
So I won't say anything more about the Strawberry, but slightly off. But you're talking about OpenAI, and you mentioned Sam Altman. So one thing I spotted in the news was the Safe Superintelligence (SSI), right? Their former OpenAI's former CTO. Amazing, right? $1 billion in cash developed for this safe intelligence system. So, sorry, it's a bit noisy. Hopefully, it's not. You can hear me, okay? But
no, we're okay.
Either of you have any thoughts about that? And also, would one of you maybe mind describing to me what is a safe intelligence system, artificial intelligence system?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. There's one other thing on OpenAI. We'll come back to the Ilya Sutskever thing in a sec because it is a really good point there, Rob. Was around in the last few days. There's been quite a bit of talk about a $2,000 a month subscription for ChatGPT, and you know the whole thing, like Twitter went into meltdown over this about, you know, how dare they charge that much for it. Is that indicative of just how much it costs to run these kind of models and train them? And maybe that is part of it. I thought really interesting take on this, because you suddenly think, well, $20 a month for a plus subscription, now jumping to $2,000 a month. Who on earth is going to pay for that? Is that just some big ripoff? But actually, you know, if you think about this GPT-5 that keeps coming that hasn't yet come, and maybe they're going to suddenly do a surprise on us at the end of the year and go, well, actually, you've already had it. That was ChatGPT 4.0 and Strawberry. That is your GPT-5. Is maybe there's a very advanced model, and this comes to the point about super intelligence in a way, I suppose, Rob, as well. Is it something that's so good that actually you can then use it in agentic workflows, and it's reliable? Because I think at the moment, what we've got is really, really good as an augmentation tool, but you still need to be a bit careful with it from an automation perspective, you know. And anyone who's used a chat GPT or any other AI assistant knows, you know, if you get it to help you write a blog, author a document, you'll still need to go through and copy edit it and wordsmith it and all of those kind of things. So when we get to that moment where actually you can completely trust it without having to have some big agentic workflow where you've got to have another LLM check the work of first LLM and so on, and all that kind of detailed stuff. When you've got something that's truly agentic, could you charge $2,000 a month for it on the basis that those are employees you no longer need to hire? You know, so you look at your hiring plans and go, well, we need more marketing assistants over here. We need more, you know, legal assistants or whatever it is. And you can replace that with a $2,000 a month chat GPT agent that, you know, is replacing a role that might cost you $4,000, $6,000 a month. You know, the business case would make sense very quickly, wouldn't
it? There's so many business cases around that. I've got a client that we did some computer vision work for reading PDFs of building plans, and when they do estimates, and when it's manually done by a human, they actually sent a document once that missed 2 pages, and that cost them $2 million. Right. So will you pay $2,000 to have a reliable piece of analytics? Yeah. You know, a report that's got everything in there. Because it's one thing to say, oh, I can read the text, my marketing text, and see if it sounds okay. It's another thing if you're looking at, say, a detailed estimate, you know, a massive long list of bill of materials, for example, that human error will be part of.
Yeah, for sure, and actually, it's you're absolutely right. And in regulated industries as well, if you're making recommendations for financial products, or it's in in the medical sector or something like that, yeah, absolutely, you need that 100% assurance. I thought it was quite funny, that news from Waymo this week about the number of accidents that Waymo robo taxis don't have by comparison to humans. I think it's about a third less, isn't it? And out of that third less that they were having, there was a very large chunk of them is where the Waymo taxi got rear-ended by a human driver. You know, so it's kind of, we need to kind of have that debate, don't we? And saying, yes, it's going to make mistakes. Yes, a robo taxi is going to crash. It's going to, you know, it's going to have probably fatal accidents at some point, but will it have fewer fatal accidents? Will agentic AI make fewer fatal mistakes than a human does? That's your key test, isn't it? I think we're going to get to a point where you're going to be running these systems in parallel and saying, actually, the AI is making far fewer mistakes than the humans are, so we'll prioritize the agents over the humans for sure. I like
what you just did there. Yeah, I like what you just did there, Geoff, because you went from saying, look at the pounds and pence of the business case, to human life can be the cost, right? So how much is the value on that?
Don't come on, life insurers do that stuff all the time, right?
Yeah. Going back to the ChatGPT subscription, I mean, I don't think that many individuals and consumers will stretch to, you know, $2,000 a month or 24 grand a year in terms of a subscription for that. Maybe some companies could do that, but I think they'll obviously, if it's true, they'll have to have some kind of tiering model. Otherwise, people will just start jumping to other LLMs. Although there'll be a bit of a obviously, a lot of people have got a lot of historical chat and insight capabilities already built into their existing accounts, ChatGPT. But I don't see that it would be realistic to suddenly go from $20 a month to 2,000. I think that would kind of be absurd. But maybe on a kind of SME or enterprise level, they can get away with it.
Yeah, for sure. I just be clear, OpenAI shut those rumors down pretty quick, didn't they? And said that we have no plans for a $2,000 a month subscription. And yeah, no, interesting stuff. And Rob, just back to what you were just saying there about safe superintelligence with Ilya Sutskever's new company and the amount of money that they raised there. I mean, this was the big thing for Ilya, wasn't it? This was he was part of that alignment team within OpenAI. This is his his life's work, I guess it is now, isn't it? Is to be able to build AGI, ASI, but to be able to do that safely. So I suppose the very simple answer to your question there is, what is safe superintelligence? Well, it's not Skynet and it's not the Terminator coming to kill us. That's the obvious one, isn't it? But that's got to be a lot more nuanced, right? Is what's the what do we mean from a practical perspective as to what safe superintelligence is, I guess, isn't it? Because it's kind of, as you sort of chunk down through the layers, it would be, you'd hope, putting guardrails in place to prevent a Skynet scenario, to prevent the paperclip problem happening. Those kind of things should be relatively straightforward within that field to do. It's probably the more nuanced stuff where it starts to make mistakes over time. So, it's maybe you've got an ASI based doctor experience, and it just starts to realize it could just cut a corner, and it does, and then suddenly that expands to, actually that's had an impact upon human lives. Maybe it works out that actually food production, you don't need to produce it to quite the same quality you thought you did, and that's okay until suddenly that scales into a global thing. It has a knock-on impact and something else. I suppose that's it, is when you get into that more nuance, that's probably the thing about safe superintelligence. I think. So what was your thinking on it?
Yeah, I mean, yes, but I think one of the things that's been ringing in my ears is we've been talking a lot about regulation at the event today as well. And obviously a lot of that regulation is to keep things safe, in terms of human life or, personal security and all those sort of things. So I would imagine it will be keeping up to the times as all of these new EU regulations are coming out. And these EU regulations are often adopted by other countries as well. It's not just the EU.
Yeah, for sure.
I think also,
go on, Pat.
Yeah, I think also things like agency and access. If it's got access to critical infrastructure or any kind of infrastructure, then that's how do you kind of model that, the implications of that, and that and the level of agency that it's given. And how do we actually understand what it's capable of? Because if it's super intelligence, then the chances are there's a lot of unknown unknowns that we can't even comprehend. So you have another super intelligent system to figure out what's going on there, and then it's kind of like a bit of a mind something. How do you get control of the whole loop? So it's going to be interesting, and I think that governments have to be heavily involved in this. We can't just rely on either individual, whether they're startup companies or labs, or I think there's got to be a lot of governmental legislation around this. But of course, different governments have different opinions and different approaches, and we've got all kinds of different geopolitical situations going on. So it's something to watch. I think there'll be a lot of opportunity, a lot of risk, and we'll figure it out along the way.
And where you are at the moment, Geoff, and so where you are in the moment, Geoff, right? In the UK, you've got critical infrastructure classification for data centers coming, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Just seeing that is in the news today. Recording this on Thursday, 12th September. It's just and you kind of think, well, isn't it already? that's the thing that sort of struck me about it is, well,
Yeah.
but maybe that's just for us looking at it. We're all in the tech business, right? You'd immediately assume that data centers were critical infrastructure.
Well,
and that kind of thing.
For example, that's how these security companies, the lock and key manufacturers, etc., of this world, they already will be selling to data centers as critical infrastructure. So I was also surprised that they didn't have the legal emergency response and protection yet. So I think it's a no-brainer that it's coming for sure, because we're just so reliant on it now, right?
Yeah, for sure. And just on that point you just made there, Pat, about regulation. It's a tough one, isn't it? Because if you leave it to the regulators, then we're going to get mired down. You look at SB 1046, the Californian bill that's now is passed, is sat on the governor's desk, isn't it, to sign off. You look at what the EU's put in as well, and you're seeing some of the vendors saying they're not going to make AI available to EU consumers. So we're here in Europe and the UK. You guys are in Finland, the EU country, and we're going to get different types of AI systems will come from the vendors. So there's got to be a whole piece that comes together, isn't there, where you've got the vendors acting in a responsible way. You've got regulation, you've got governments, and I think actually. I think it's really good to have people like Ilya Sutskever around who are really keen on doing this. Geoffrey Hinton coming out and saying his honest thoughts about AI and alignment. I think we need all of those kind of people coming together to make sure that whatever comes, we do it as safely as we possibly can. So cool. So we've gone through a whole load of stuff there. Anything else before we wrap up?
Well,
I'm good.
Yeah, I was going to say we had Pat's been working some interesting stuff on AI and HR. We're not going to cover that off today, but what I'd like to do on our next podcast, and we can maybe sort of talk about it now, is maybe our next topic will be AI applications in HR. I know Pat's been working in that field, and I've been looking at it on the recruitment side as well lately, and sort of testing skills, etc. And then we'll bring in maybe a guest speaker, which we can announce later, who's also been
for sure. Yeah, I think so. I think it's a really good one to go at, Rob. And let's definitely go through that. So anybody watching this, listening to us, if you've got particular questions around HR and recruitment in AI, then send those across to us. Drop them into the comments on this on the video, and we'll bring those up and discuss them. As you say, we've got a guest speaker we can bring in who's an expert in this matter as well. But it's a big thing, isn't it? I mean, I think the whole recruitment world is struggling with AI right now, because you've got AI automatic candidate reviewing. You've got people using AI to help write CVs and put job applications in. The whole thing is just going to turn very messy very quickly if it hasn't already.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there is all of the issues you've got around responsible AI use in the HR field, for sure.
Especially now that we're seeing AI doing the vetting of the candidates as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but we'll get
definitely.
into that.
Cool. All right, well, let's wrap there. That's been really good. Good to see you both. Rob, enjoy your supercomputer tour. I'm very jealous. I would love to go around and see that. And
as always, I'm following Pat. He's already been here, right? So yeah.
Yeah, of course. Right. Well, guys, really good to talk to you as always, and we'll catch you soon.
Thanks, Geoff. Thanks, Rob. See you soon.
Thank you. Cheers.